All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today for our She Connects online fireside chat and networking event. We are going to get started right away because I'm mindful for some people it's their lunch break, for some people it's late. So we want to kind of jam pack an hour full of fun and value. So let's jump straight into it. Today we are having a fireside chat with Allison from Earnscape, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. Then we're going to jump into a networking game, and then we're going to wrap it up with some Q&A. If you haven't heard of Earnscape before and you are into gaming, I'm actually really interested if you are into gaming, or especially mobile gaming, if you could put it in the chat. I always just like to ask people because you earn rewards for playing your favorite games, and they're primarily kind of focused on mobile. So if you are a gamer and you want to learn more, go ahead, scan that QR code, go and check them out. They have been one of our partners, and we'll be collaborating with them more in the future regarding some kind of gaming and how you can earn points and then turn those points into stable coins. So stay tuned for some more activations that will be coming up in ways that you can participate. As I mentioned earlier, I'm going to do a quick introduction, then we're going to jump into our fireside chat, then we're going to do a networking game. That's when we break into the breakout rooms. That part of the session will not be recorded, okay? And then we'll come back into the main room and we will wrap it up, and then you can all head back on to your days. Now, just give me a moment. I'm going to let somebody else in as people are tuning in. So, a bit of housekeeping. If you want to keep your microphone muted, but this is an interactive session. I am more than happy for you to unmute yourself, put your hand up, ask questions. It is interactive, but just keeping yourself muted. Or, if you want to put your questions in the chat, we can go through those as well. So we do like to keep these sessions super interactive as we kind of progress through. So who am I? If we haven't had a chance to meet, my name is Danielle Marie. I am the founder of Evolve Her, which is my passion project. That is my main time focus, which I'll tell you a little bit more about in just a moment. I'm also going to tell you a little bit about all things blockchain, and then Women of DECA, which is the women's working group of DECA, which is the Digital Economy Council of Australia. So we all work together to collaborate to kind of put these types of activations on together. Now, what is our overall mission? Our arching mission is to support over 1 million women to enter in the digital economy. So that really encompasses Web3, blockchain, crypto, AI, and how we can support them to confidently enter in this ecosystem. And how are we looking to achieve that? Through our mentorship program, through education, and through community. So this type of event would be considered a community-based event where we're going to have a fireside chat. We're going to, Allison is going to share her journey of how she got into the industry, into crypto and blockchain, and her landscape within the compliance industry. So there's also going to be an education component to it. So these are our three core pillars on how we're going to achieve our overall arching goal. And then we collaborate with our impact partners, such as all things blockchain, which I'll tell you about more in a moment, and many more of them, as you can see, Women of DECA, and we're continuously looking to partner. So this could be education partners, this could be community partners, this could be social impact. So we're really wanting to collaborate and partner with many different organizations. So if you are interested in partnering with us, please reach out to me. I'll share the contact details in just a moment with you, as we're continuously looking to grow our impact partners. So we are officially launching our education and community platform. That will be happening at the end of the month when we actually launch our boot camp, which I will tell you about in just a moment as well. But we do have a waiting list for the Evolve Her community hub, and we are doing a special kind of promotion for the first 100 members. So you can go ahead and sign up, and then you'll be the first to know when that community group is open for you. I want to tell you a little bit about all things blockchain. It's a nonprofit association that I was one of the original founders back in November 2020. And we have grown to over 3,400 members locally here in Australia. And we host regular educational networking events in person in Queensland. But we have also started doing a lot of online activations. And now we are partnering with Evolver and all things blockchain. And that we're coming together to provide more education, more networking events, and working collectively together with our overall goal of onboarding more people into the ecosystem. My background as an educator is basically the cornerstone of hosting these types of events. So we have a lot coming up. If you want to go to the event calendar, you can scan that QR code. That's going to take you. We cross promote all of our events. So we've got the Web3 and Crypto Bootcamp coming up. You will not find that one on there yet. We haven't actually officially announced it. This is a little bit of alpha for everybody that is on here. It will be fully being launched on Monday. We'll be sharing all of the links. It will be available on the Luma calendar. And then ATB has an in real life event and has some online events coming up that we cross promote. So you can just go to the Luma calendar, and then we will be promoting all of our events there if you want to be tuning in. And the good thing with all things blockchain, even our in-person events are all live streamed, so people can tune in and watch and participate online. So as I said earlier, that is enough for me. We don't want to waste too much time, but I would love to connect with anybody that is interested in partnering or would like to find out more about our mentorship programs or educational programs that we are launching. So we are going to play a networking game at the end. We're going to come back to this. As I mentioned earlier, we'll stop the recording. We're going to jump into some breakout rooms and get an opportunity to network with people, just globally, and so that we can support and grow our network. But at the moment, before we do that, I am going to introduce our guest speaker, Allison from Earnscape. Thank you so much for joining us. I know it's a little bit late for you and you've actually been traveling, so I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. And I'm just going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to hand it over to you to just share a little bit before we get into the very fun compliance stuff, which for some people is not so fun, and for other people, I bet you they thrive on it. But it is such an important aspect, and we actually just had a conference here, the D conference, which was very regulation and compliance focused in Australia, and what are we doing here in that perspective. So I'm definitely happy to jump into that conversation. But before we do that, I would like you to share a little bit about your journey of just like how did you kind of first find out about crypto and blockchain? How long ago was it? And how did that kind of turn into where you are today as the Chief Compliance Officer for Earnscape? If you can just give us a little context on your background and your journey.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for having me. Thank you for putting on this event. I think it's a wonderful idea of bringing communities together, and especially women in the space. So thank you. And how I got into this. Okay, so I'm an attorney. And before law school, I'm originally from Houston, Texas, which is the heart of oil and gas country. So before law school, I was an analyst and forecaster. And so I tried to understand oil and gas production and then forecast. It was a lot of crunching numbers and a lot of time to really study the industry and read and learn. So I figured when I went to law school, I would go straight back into that. And I did for a little while, and I was very unhappy, and I just did not like anything I was doing. And I had to do a continuing education, and I needed in Texas, you need 15 hours a year, and I needed less than an hour. So I just went on the website and found a free, like the Texas bar site, they have maybe 3 free hours a year. The first one they had was on blockchain. So I started watching it. The first thing that's going through my head is, oh my gosh, this is how statistics could be so much more efficient. Everything would just be, it would be so much better. So I call a roommate at the time from when I was in law school because she was at business school, and I was like, "Well, can you tell me about blockchain?" She said, "Oh, it's just a buzzword. Everything, so it's not going to stick." This is probably 2017, maybe. So I became obsessed because I saw such an interesting I mean, use cases in every single industry. And then I started to learn more about crypto and digital assets of all different types. And then I probably spent about a year trying to find a firm where I could work on different, not be siloed. So work on regulatory and compliance, but also business formation and also investments and general contracts. So that's how I found the firm where I am, Cogent. So it's Cogent Law Group, and we're based out of DC, which is where I was living until about 2 months ago, but that's a long story. I'll be back there soon. But Cogent gives us as attorneys the freedom to work in different areas, and we've built a really neat fintech and blockchain practice. And that's the compliance side and the regulatory side. That was another accidental find. I began with Cogent in March of 2020, so that was some interesting timing. Um, but in early 2021, some state laws changed in the US that made it a little more confusing for companies trying to launch in the fintech space. And so I shifted over just out of need. And I mean, really, it's been fascinating because the regulatory compliance issues in the US are federal and state level. And so that means you have 50 states plus our territories plus the federal government to navigate. And that gets very complicated. And I think those are some of the topics we're going to talk about.
Yeah, and that's how you ended up at Earnscape. So that's how you got into
Oh,
the industry. How
that's
did
a pretty funny story. So I played field hockey in college, and Steve was a swimmer in college, Steve Wood, the founder of Earnscape. And I had on, we were both in the same conference. He was at University of Cincinnati, I was University of Louisville, which are actually pretty close together, but we were in the same conference. And I had my Big East jacket on because it was just a little bit chilly that day. And I just walked out of the house, I grabbed it, and I'm long out of college. And we walked by him. We were at the same, it was a blockchain event, but he goes, I have that jacket. So that's how that conversation got started. So small world in a lot of ways. But with Earnscape in particular, it's been just an absolute delight to see how it's grown and evolved. That was not intentional, but how the product has evolved and the team has grown. And I mean, the original idea is not where they are now. And I mean that in a really great way because, and I think this is a very common story in Web3. You get into it and you realize that there's a need here and here and here. And then your product starts to fill those voids. And Earnscape has done just a, I mean, what I think will make the company so unique wasn't on the radar when they began. So that's really cool. And that's, I think, just very indicative of being in Web3 and the types of people who get involved. Problem solvers.
Yeah, definitely. You are always, and that was the core essence of the course that I delivered. So for the last 5 years, I've been delivering a diploma of applied blockchain. And one of the core essence of it is what problem are we solving from the Web2 perspective, right? And then you have to help these people understand, okay, well, the experts in those industries, maybe know the problems, but they don't know how they're going to use the technology. And then you need to learn about the technology, how you're going to use that technology to solve those problems.
Exactly.
So I love that, and I love that. Thank you for sharing that journey of kind of how you ended up in the Web3 space. Now, just out of curiosity, before we jump into some of the kind of questions around kind of compliance and working in the Web3 space that are kind of like specific to that industry, outside of your role of like compliance and helping as an attorney, like, are you a speculator or an investor? Like, do you dabble, do you invest in cryptocurrencies, or are you more of a I'm a backer of the technology, I believe in blockchain, I support it, I do everything, but like I am not actively in using the tokens in that sense.
Two parts to that. Definitely dabble and play and have fun. But when I was the analyst and forecaster, I would spend between 2 to 6 hours a day just reading about the industry. And I was really good at investing when I did that.
Mm,
So what I learned is if you have the time, great, go for it. I don't have the time right now to really dive into
mm,
the investment, the speculative side. Like I would need to for my own sanity because I mean there's so much information out there and there's so much quality information. But even the process of learning where the quality information is takes time. And
mhm,
I think that's why something like this is a great community because if you can start to connect with people who have the resources and have the knowledge base, that's
mm.
helps you you still have to do all the work yourself, but you cut down on where to start sometimes, which is very valuable.
Yeah, yeah, that's a sense in the essence, the courses and things that we will be developing, and how each teaches. You just don't know what you need to know, and you don't know the order that you need to know it. And if you're time poor, so then this is what there are, and we're not going to go down this avenue, but like there are people out there that do these research reports and things, and you can become a part of those communities. And there's certain podcasts and things that you can tune into
Mhm.
where you pay for them. That's why where consultants come in. You pay them for
Yeah.
doing the research and the time. So there are problems. But what I liked that you wanted to highlight the most before we jump into a couple compliance questions and then get into our networking game is I like how you said it takes time to learn, right? So then you have to find a way. You either have to leverage or you have to find somebody that you trust and you're like, okay, great, I trust their knowledge, their research. Okay, great. You know what? I'm going to pay them for their newsletter or their report where they've actually gone and deep dived on these 5 projects and this is why and this is the tokenomics and da 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 da. And then you pick it up and it's like, okay, great. Like, okay, now I can go and make an educated decision. But if you don't know where to start, that can be the most trickiest part. So that's where we're trying to bridge that gap in helping those people that are new or just don't have the time and because they're doing a million and
Yeah.
one things. And especially if you're in startup world, which I know Earnscape is and what Evolver is like I'm wearing 20 different hats. I'd love to sit down and do like research on what tokens I'd like to speculate in, but I just don't have the time.
I was, yeah, I was great when I had 2 to 6 hours a day to spend reading about something.
Yeah.
And then I went to law school and I was like, oh, I'm not as good when I don't have the time. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a perfect example. Like most people in the Web3 space are developing something. They are pouring their hearts and souls and their energy and their time into something. It's hard to stay on top of everything going on beyond word of mouth from friends, which I try to avoid that as an investment strategy.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Well, let's not go too much down that rabbit hole because I'm sure we could keep talking about it. But I want to talk about the regulatory landscape. Being with your experience and obviously being based in America, and we're in a very interesting time with Trump. And then I just heard about Trump and Elon fighting. Like, how does that impact Doge? Whatever, how is that impacting how decisions are being made? And and I'm sure we could actually do a whole session on this. And if there's a demand, maybe we can actually, do a whole session where we deep dive into that. But what, from kind of your perspective at the moment, is the kind of current trends or things that you're thinking that are going to be happening and how is the US going to be fitting into the kind of global ecosystem? Because it's been very hard to do business as a Web3 business in America recently. I know a lot of exchanges here that are trying to enter into the US market, but it's very difficult. So yeah, if you can kind of give us your perspective from being on the ground where you guys are.
Yeah, I'll start by saying I'm not going to try to predict the future. I I'll give one last little oil and gas piece that um I think is very applicable to Web3. Early when I'm 22, 23, and I'm chatting with a family friend who worked for one of the largest companies in the world. Uh, and she I asked about some regulatory changes and she said, and she didn't mean this as a negative, but we're above governments. If the governments don't cooperate, we go to the next country. And that's what Web3 is. If the US is gonna put up too many roadblocks, companies will go to other countries. And I think the US knows that. So I think there's still a lot of opportunity when I'll answer this in 2 parts. One, I think If you want to do business in the US, you will be able to do business in the US. You just have to go through a framework that doesn't, I mean, look at the EU. You're still going through, even with Mika, you're going through individual countries. So that's how the US, you're going to go through the individual states. And for the exchanges in particular, happy to chat with them because it's more about having a roadmap and following your plan because you have to go state by state, which is goofy in a lot of ways, but that's how we've set it
Sounds
up.
like complex and a lot of work.
Uh-huh. That's what makes my sanity go out the window. No, that's the type of stuff that it feels so it feels like you're not really exercising your brain. It feels like you're not pushing yourself, and then all of a sudden you hit these roadblocks, and it's like, oh, this is what we do. This is why we're here because it is complex and it is not straightforward, and laws are changing. Like Massachusetts is changing their laws, and they are now they're not 100% sure. Like we had really productive conversations with the licensing team, and they're like, we're not completely sure if that's going to be necessary because there hasn't been enough time for these issues to be worked out. So the good thing is they're doing this 6 months in advance, so they're working through it. But that's where legislative body passes something, and the licensing team has to
Mm.
figure out how to apply it, which can be challenging, mixed in with legal, of course. But I still think the US there's a lot of great opportunity. And the companies that are coming into the market have, I mean, you have an engaged consumer. So that's exciting. And I'm seeing this note that Canada is very behind. I I hear that from
I hear it a lot.
yeah, I hear that, but then I also like some of our Canadian clients who are coming to the US are like, oh, we prefer Canada and how it's set up. So who
Mm.
knows? Like, I think when you're in it, you just have to figure it out. I know that's really great advice and helpful.
Yeah, I think, well, all I hear is that people that I know, I obviously get a lot of people reach out to me, especially from my past in Canada, because when people knew me in Canada, I wasn't into crypto or blockchains. And then now they'll reach out to me and they'll ask me, and they're like, where can I buy it? It's so hard. And it's been challenging in
Oh, for the individual consumer. Interesting. Because I'm coming from the working with companies and the licensing, like we don't work in Canada, but we work with companies that have Canadian operations or are Canadian companies coming to the US. And from the regulatory perspective,
Mm.
it's it's much less of a headache. Now, it still is not
Mm.
straightforward, but that's fascinating that the from the consumer side, it's really
I think it
problematic.
depends on the business model, and the exchanges obviously get a little bit more scrutiny, and as they
Oh
should.
yeah,
Uh,
those
And
flow of funds.
we could probably do a whole session, and I'm mindful of time, and I want to fit in this
Yeah.
networking game, but we could almost do a whole session of the different exchanges. There was that one from Canada, the Quadrigix, and then there was FTX, and then there was this and that. Like, we have to learn from these things, but every industry with technology has learned. We could talk about all the different types of Web2 scams and internet scams and everything too, right? With technology comes vulnerabilities, with vulnerabilities comes scams, and we do need protections and regulations and things set into place to be able to kind of create it as a safer place. But I think it's really truly important that people understand that there's the technology side of it, right? And the regulation of the technology and how we're using it, which is completely different than the part that most people just see cryptocurrency as a speculative asset that you buy and buy from an exchange, and it's full of scams, which is just kind of like one front side of the industry, and there's a whole other side of it, which I think is quite fascinating. So I'm going to ask anybody if they have any questions to put them in the chat. I have one last question, and then we're going to wrap up this fireside chat, and then we will jump into the fun networking part of the session. So for people that are maybe potentially looking at starting a business in Web3, Where would you recommend that they start a business? I keep hearing, especially maybe this can be a two-part. In America, people keep telling me like Delaware for some reason is like the place, and like something about like taxes. I can't remember exactly. It's like, yeah, their company was in Delaware. And then obviously a lot of people in the crypto space are choosing countries like the UAE, like Dubai or BVI. In the Web3 space, in terms of compliance and regulation, do you have any kind of particular places that you think are like the better places to set up a Web3 business in terms of regulation and being able to grow, but also still be protected?
100%. So in the US, most companies will set up either in Delaware, but in Web3, a lot are setting up in Wyoming too. Um, the main reason for Delaware is historically they have the most established and most clear court system. So you know how things will work out. There's not a lot of gray area, which is really helpful. And also, if you're looking for outside investment, most large scale investors will require a Delaware corporation. So that's just pretty straightforward. Wyoming is like if you're not really looking for outside investment and you're Web3, Wyoming's a pretty good spot usually. Sorry,
Yeah.
my dog, Earl. My dog is sitting here crying because he's not getting attention. Uh, and then when it comes to internationally, it just really depends on what the project is and what the goals are. Like if you're s- crying by my feet, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. We can't
But
hear. Okay.
uh, that's good. But it depends on what the goals are, what the token, if there's a token, and then also if this is a personal opinion that I'm about to put out there. I think that if you're if you have a target audience that's somewhere, build it there. Like that's what you're gonna have to be compliant there. You're gonna have to follow the rules and you're gonna have to register and all of that. So why not get it started there? Unless there's a huge tax benefit, which can be the case. Um, that's a much longer conversation.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good. I think that can give some food for thought. Well, thank you so much for that. Thank you for sharing your story. Yes, definitely invite the dog to networking.
Sorry.
Or,
Yeah, he's just gonna
nobody.
ride.
Oh, he just wants hugs and kisses. Nobody seems to have any questions. So, with that being said, I hope that everybody kind of got a little bit of kind of value from that chat and kind of understanding. And these chats are all about just sharing how different people get into this industry through different verticals, and yours came from more of a legal and, kind of research perspective. Some come from, marketing education. Like I came from hospitality into this. So, that's what a lot of this is, just to kind of share the stories of how you got interested in kind of what you're doing. And thank you for sharing a little bit of that landscape of where America's at. I think it's definitely too hard to predict the future unless you're the Simpsons or something. Uh, they predicted Donald Trump being president. So it'll be interesting to see. I do think that we're in an interesting time, not only with Trump in power, but then we've got AI, and then we have, yeah. So there's a lot of variables. I think that the next few years are going to be interesting ones. So thank you so much for sharing that. I am going to wrap up the recording now, and then what we'll do is we will start and play that networking game. So let me just go